Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Hopefully, with that blanket greeting, I've covered every time zone. Thank you for joining the webinar. I am glad to have with me Kevin Tolly, founder of the Tolly Group, who spent 4 decades in the IT industry. His company provides testing and validation services for IT companies, and he will talk about that and the work related to Infoblox shortly. I am Prakash Nagpal, and I'm responsible for product marketing at Infoblox. I've been in the IT industry for almost 3 decades. What a remarkable journey it has been. 30-something years ago, hailing a cab required standing at a street corner and hoping you would get picked up. Today, it is all about pressing the screen on the supercomputer you carry in your pocket or purse. 20 years ago, there was no Facebook. Today, they have 2 billion users. 10 years ago, having friends meant actually having friends. Today, a friend, and I just used air quotes, is an icon or picture on the same supercomputer. Okay, that was social commentary, and I digress. The point is, the pace of change we see around us is unprecedented. The change has required a different way to start and operate businesses. With the digitization of everything, that means the underlying network, that is the fabric of every business, must change to meet the demands placed on the network and the business. During this webinar, we will talk about how you can get the most out of this network, where we believe you should start in driving the efficiency and agility of the network and the key factors to consider while ensuring that your network can meet the ever-changing needs of your business and make sure it is set up to protect your key assets and users. I want to set some context and dig a little deeper into the changes we are facing. Kevin will follow with some of the factors to consider as you navigate the change and the potential cost impacts of doing business today with the systems that were meant for hailing a cab from the street corner. I will circle back to how Infoblox can help you navigate through the changes effectively and efficiently. If you have questions during the webinar, please make sure you submit them through the Q&A panel in your console, and we will try to answer the questions during the webinar, either online or verbally at the end. There are several dimensions along which environments and networks are evolving. Some of them are easier to convey on a slide than others. I am sure you look at this slide in front of you, and every vendor could legitimately talk about this slide. But they are relevant to any conversation about networking and represent the common set of challenges any entity that operates a network faces. Our customers tell us their networks must be designed to accommodate more users, more devices, the 20-something billion devices that we expect connected by the year 2020. And that include multiple vendors and a diversity of architectures, virtualized, private cloud, public cloud, or a combination of all the above. The network must work seamlessly with a combination of technologies from a variety of vendors. It's not just cloud vendors, but vendors of SDN technology, virtualization, orchestration solutions, and more. One must only look at the headlines to see another threat, another cyber attack, another instance of ransomware resulting in a network outage or the theft of critical data from an enterprise or a government. The nature, magnitude, and impact and velocity of the threats has grown to almost an unmanageable level, at least unmanageable with legacy manual platforms. In 2015, there were 430 million pieces of uniquely identified malware. That's about 1.5 million pieces of malware a day. The network you build must not only be secure, but work efficiently in this new world. Networks are built to support applications. Network efficiency and security manifests itself in the applications that are deployed on the network. We believe that this need for efficiency and security of the network must be addressed from the core. We would contend that the core or starting point to address this efficiency is at the foundation, which is DNS. Whether your application is simple as email, newly deployed for supporting IoT, or complex to support how organizations take and process orders for goods and services you offer, it all starts with DNS. Anytime a user or device attempts to connect to a network, it requires DHCP. Whether an application is accessed with a URL or IP address, it requires DNS. Yet, most networks and DNS solutions meant to operate in this new world are rife with inefficiencies associated with this core. They have inefficient processes. It turns out that 8 out of 10 companies we surveyed use manual processes which are tedious, time-consuming, and drive higher costs. The inefficiencies also mean that this network would be hard to scale, or at least very expensive to scale. 81% of companies surveyed reported that they had only limited oversight or visibility into their environment. The proliferation of platforms without a fabric that can weave them together results in not having a holistic view of resources in the full environment, public, private, hybrid, or a combination of all. Most organizations have a set of disparate platforms, and majority of the organizations surveyed had 3 or more platforms in their environment. Without the right systems in place, the platforms are unlikely to work well together, will be managed with disparate tools, resulting in a poor user experience. And when things go wrong, they're harder to detect. While there might be an ocean of data, there is really no readily available insight. The result is security and compliance challenges. There is no shortage of security tools available, but these are often deployed in silos, making it difficult to get timely, prioritized, contextualized, and actionable intelligence, impacting incident response and remediation. Not only that, most available security tools do not address DNS. DNS, which has become one of the leading vectors of attacks in our time. I've talked about the challenges that companies encounter, and before I turn it over to Kevin to talk about how to think about efficiency in your new network and how to quantify the impacts of these inefficiencies, we want to learn a little bit about the networks that you manage or work with. That leads us to our first polling question. What is your biggest cost concern in dealing with your DNS, DHCP, and IP address infrastructure? And I'll give people about a minute to respond. As a reminder, there is a Q&A console at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please submit those. All right, let's take a look at the results. Manual labor and effort for ongoing network tasks, task completion delays due to dependencies on other departments. It's a great segue for me to turn it over to Kevin. Kevin, these results seem aligned with the work that you have done, but I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me queue up my slides here and get that one up to date here. Let's make sure everybody can see. Hey, Prakash, thank you. Yep, I mean, all of this certainly keys right into what I've got to say here. I'm getting, maybe somebody can help me push that slide because I was getting an on24 error on that. But let me start, see if we can get my slide up there. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks, Prakash, for your introduction. And as you noted, you'll be back again after my presentation. My name is Kevin Tolly, and I'm the founder of the Tolly Group, and will be presenting today on behalf of my team. Our topic today is IP address management. Specifically, I will be reviewing a test and TCO analysis conducted by Tolly of the Infoblox authoritative IPAM for DNS and DHCP, or IPAM for short. And as we'll see, as Prakash said, all things do start and end with DNS. In this project, we looked at a Microsoft-oriented networking environment and focused on quantifying the effort to perform common address management tasks manually via the no-cost tools provided by Microsoft, and compare that to the time and effort required to accomplish the same tasks using IPAM. The results were certainly eye-opening. The full results can be found in Tolly report number 218113. The original test and publication took place in 2015, but the results are as valid and relevant today as they were then. The report can be found free of charge on Tolly.com and is available also from Infoblox. And I'm going to ask somebody to help me from the On24 team because I'm getting a sad face on my desktop display here. And everybody should be seeing my slide titled Project Overview. Let's see if, there we go. Okay, it's all good again. Thank you. So the question that we sought to answer ultimately was, is free really free? Just because there is no purchase cost does not necessarily mean that there will be no cost to use. We all know that one of our most precious and limited and expensive resources is time. There is always more than enough work, too much work, to go around, especially for network support specialists. So common sense tells us that manual methods don't scale in a cost-effective manner, and that there is a point where an automated solution will become and remain the better value. And as networks get larger, the savings in time and money of a solution like IPAM becomes ever more significant. Of course, to make a business case, you need hard numbers. And that was what this project was all about. We identified common IP address management tasks, measured the time to execute them manually in a best-case scenario. Let me just digress there for a second. Some of the tasks, Prakash mentioned about silos, right? So some tasks go outside of my department. Some tasks require interaction across departments, and there can be and often is a delay just in going from silo to silo. So when you look at our numbers, we use best-case manual scenario. That assumed that any interaction that had to take place across silos happened immediately. Typically not the case. So again, and a theme that I'll get back to throughout this is we try to use very conservative numbers in terms of looking at what we're doing in terms of effort. So then we completed these same tasks using Infoblox IPAM and again measured the time to complete the task. With this information, which we will dig into shortly, we built a model that estimated the frequency of the tasks and calculated the dollar cost and savings from the two different labor approaches, in networks ranging in IP address space size from 10,000 addresses to 100,000 addresses, and a couple of data points in the middle. As we go through the detailed discussion, it is important to keep in mind that you can take what we did and tweak it so it maps even more closely with your environment. So what's important here is the empirical approach, how we looked at tasks and time and extrapolated that to give a bigger picture. So you can always customize this approach so that it better matches tasks and frequency that you see in your environment. Okay, let's look at the bottom line here. I'm waiting for this thing to push out. I don't know. There we go. Okay, good. So the bottom line is a very significant potential for labor savings. These savings can more than offset the cost of implementing a system such as Infoblox IPAM. We estimated the frequency of the various detailed tasks, coming up on the next slide, and extrapolated that out as shown to networks containing various IP addresses to manage. So even on the smallest network used in our calculation, the labor savings amounted to over $100,000 across 3 years. As we move up to the largest network size included in our calculation, you can see that the estimated labor savings increases linearly to over $1 million. So let's note the obvious here. So these are big savings. This is not just a few percentage points of savings. And this is important because, to me, this means that even if your list of exact tasks and task frequency differs somewhat from our model, the labor savings are still likely to be very significant, and thus the potential financial benefit also very significant. Let me move to the next slide here. So all of the graphics in this presentation are drawn directly from our Tolly report. So you don't need to make scribbled notes here. You can download that report and have all of these to look at, as well as additional details. So in this and the next slide, we'll look at the core set of tasks that we benchmarked. We will look at them two different ways. First, we will look at the relative time differences between manual and automated, and then in the following slide, the actual timings for each. So now again, this is something that you can do with your own tasks to illustrate potential time savings benefits. Something else to keep in mind with our manual calculations: in our test environment, we were able to move from, say, a network definition task to, say, a switch port configuration without having to contact another department. So then we didn't have the silos, right? And as I said on the prior slide, in your world, that might not be the way it is done. So if anything, our manual calculations are best case and assume the task can be completed quite efficiently, even manually. Again, in the real world, that might not be the case. So just glancing at the relative time cost of manually executing these tasks can be quite significant. Again, we are not looking at 1 or 2% delta. As you can see, most of the manual tasks required 150% to 600%, or 6 times the amount of time that was required to accomplish the same task via automation. So again, your tasks may be different, but we can see across a range of tasks the times required for and the difference between manual and automation was very, very significant, which likely translates into very significant savings. So let's take a look at the timings for each, which is another way of looking at the same data, on the next slide. And here we go for that. So here are the tasks that we saw on the prior slide, but represented in a little different manner. Again, this table is drawn from our report. If you have any difficulty seeing it, you can see it nice and clearly in the report. The first column shows the time in seconds required to accomplish the task manually, and the second column shows the time required using Infoblox automation. The final column shows the savings from automation, so this shows how much time is saved through automation, where the prior slide showed the additional time required for manual versus automation. So again, two different ways of looking at the same numbers, a different way of giving you context and perspective. So with this raw data and a labor rate of $75, we then built a model based on frequency of tasks. Now, I won't go through all of this. This is found on page 6 of our report, but let's just look at a couple of things here. So we established an assumed frequency task. So for example, we said add a host with static IP 3%. And that means in the 10,000 IP address scenario, administrators need to modify 3% or 300 hosts with static IP addresses every month. Okay? So as you go through here, again, you can easily tweak these, add your own tasks, tweak these tasks to match your environment. But a couple more examples: add a host with a DHCP reservation, 1%. Add a new subnet, 1.5%. Switch port configuration, 1%. So these are, quite low numbers, but I think to go to the point that Prakash made earlier, looking at big numbers, you take these small percentages, but you apply them to ever-growing networks, and these numbers get to be very significant. And as you see here, it translates into the labor, the effort to do this work manually becomes significant. So the actual occurrence rate of a given task is naturally dependent upon the environment. So this model assumes a relatively low percentage of changes and additions each month. Prospective customers should map these results and these assumptions to their own environments to provide more relevant time and cost savings calculations. It may well be that you have a very active environment and that the frequency of changes and additions is much greater, and of course then the cost of doing them manually is much higher, and the value of automating them is also much higher. So if our model is appropriate for your environment, you're all set. We built it to be conservative and relevant. The tasks are certainly normal tasks, and the change rates of a few percentage points we believe are reasonable and conservative as well. Again, if your environment is different, you can build upon our work by identifying important tasks for your environment and benchmarking manual task execution time. No doubt Infoblox can provide information on task execution time for your important tasks, and you can build your own model. So, at the highest level, it is evident that there is a significant amount of labor and money to be saved. Also, consider that the people who have to run these tasks now probably have more important and more interesting work to be doing that can provide more value for your company. Keep in mind as well that once a task is automated, human error is eliminated, and you're far less likely to have fixes and updates that instead of fixing things end up breaking other things. So we don't calculate the value of these intangibles, but they are there nevertheless. So be sure to download our report so you can read the details of the tasks, the results, and the detailed methodology. We're certain that when you take a realistic look at your environment, you will see the benefits of automation. So that's the end of my formal presentation. Let's move ahead to another polling question. So that should be showing up on your screens momentarily. So please take that poll, and Prakash will lead us through that discussion and on into his presentation. So thanks, everybody. Prakash, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for that insight. It's intriguing to me how little things can add up. Right? While you might not add a new printer every day, you're definitely making configurations every day. And 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of devices, can add up very quickly to, as they say, real money.
Yes, and I think to your point, what looked like fairly simple tasks, go and measure them. Measure them, and in larger networks, do the math. That's all we tried to do, is come up with a reasonable empirical model, and it wasn't hard to illustrate the very, very significant differences in labor between the manual, old way, as you put it, and the new way. So absolutely, good point.
Thank you, Kevin. So while considering TCO, what is important to you? What is your network priority? How do you think about TCO in your network? Is it about acquiring and maintaining the system, about the time savings, about the automation? We'd love to hear from the people on this call. And I'll give you guys a little bit to respond. Okay, let's look at the results. Total time to acquire. So the winner here is network visibility, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Automation, and it's a tie with efficiency and removing manual processes. Excellent. Seems well aligned with the perspective that you talked about and what you measured, Kevin. So good. No surprises thus far. So how can Infoblox help? Infoblox can help organizations on multiple fronts to drive down their total TCO and address the complexity that arises from supporting the next generation of business needs. We do this by offering a solution that provides greater efficiency, delivering and scaling efficient, always-on core network services in your always-on network across region, subnet, zone, sites. Providing better visibility. You cannot control what you cannot see. Infoblox enables deeper intelligence and customized reporting for better management and planning. Easier manageability by providing automation across network services and workflow integration with orchestration platforms. We can improve reliability, scalability, and reduce operational efforts and cost. And enhance security. The vulnerability of DNS remains a critical consideration for every network. Security is an issue that won't go away in the foreseeable future, and Infoblox delivers defense against DNS-based attacks and network-based threats. I will talk a little bit about each of these in detail and how our solutions bring performance with lower TCO to the network. And these seem aligned with what you as listeners of this webinar seem to be focused on. I'll start with efficiency. Delivering efficiency in the complex multi-cloud environment is a multifaceted challenge. Infoblox addresses this with our grid architecture designed to scale and meet the needs of large or small enterprises and several service providers around the globe. It uses a distributed database that keeps all information accurate and consistent among DDI platforms. As the network evolves and grows, the grid architecture can extend as needed with complete data integrity. Our IP address management can encompass existing environments, including Microsoft Windows Server, to consolidate management of Microsoft's DHCP and DNS solutions. The term single pane of glass has become a cliche, but in this case, we offer a single pane management of your Microsoft DNS or virtualized or cloud environment to increase efficiency. Our efficiency imperative applies not only to the environment around Infoblox, but to our own solution. The Infoblox architecture is designed to be highly available. Communication between appliances is secure. Software updates are done with a single click across the network, and one can have a grid master and grid master candidate for backup and total survivability. Let me illustrate the challenge of manageability that Kevin covered and that we've talked about. When a data center moves to the cloud, especially a hybrid cloud, manageability challenges become more complex. VMware, Amazon, and OpenStack automate provisioning of compute and storage, but the associated network provisioning may still be a manual exercise. The graphic breaks down the various steps in changing the subnet of a network. Of course, it involves multiple, often manual actions, and it could involve multiple owners, from identifying available address space to updating Microsoft Active Directory. The process could last days, and human errors might lead to possible rework at best and downtime in the worst case. With automation, the process timeline can shift from days to minutes and eliminate possible errors. A dual advantage of agility and accuracy. While simplistic, the scenario illustrates the type of automation that can happen day over day and can add up to a substantial time sink. This is the point that Kevin was making earlier too. The goal is pretty clear. Make the process fast, accurate, and reliable. You as listeners talked about visibility, and I talked about visibility and the fact that 80% of survey respondents highlighted the challenge of not having the ability to get an authoritative view of their environment. Infoblox consolidates data across your infrastructure regardless of geography, type of environment, Microsoft, virtual environment, public cloud, private cloud, regardless of technology vendor, Microsoft, Amazon, VMware, Cisco, ACI, OpenStack, and many more, to give you such an authoritative view. We can integrate with your existing environment and eliminate manual steps required to generate such visibility. The information can be used in dashboards to visualize your environment, consolidated and made available for root cause analysis, or fed into third-party systems to drive actions. In addition to allowing discovery, Infoblox has a set of products that allow you to provision and monitor your physical and virtual infrastructure, even when your infrastructure is made up of elements from a variety of vendors. Infoblox provides out-of-the-box reports that allow you to identify problems before they have significant impact on your network and therefore your business. Infoblox is also unique in the breadth of type of environments that we integrate with. With Infoblox's cloud network automation products, you can automate IP address management for physical and virtual resources. The solution leverages Infoblox's grid to replace manual provisioning and deprovisioning of resources and manage cloud networks. Part of making our solution easier to manage is being able to deploy our products in the environment of your choosing. We offer physical appliances and virtualized DDI appliances with identical capabilities. This leverages an organization's commitment to virtualization technology, including VMware, Hyper-V, KVN, and Xen Server, and more. The appliances scale to meet the needs of your branch location or small enterprise, to your headquarters and service provider networks that handle millions of subscribers. By providing our customers the choice to deploy your appliances virtually or with physical hardware, and having adapters or plugins for key cloud orchestration tools, we unlock the value of these virtual networks. These plugins work with enterprise IP address management in real time to manage IP address assignment, making the network provisioning process dynamic and efficient. IP and DNS records are allocated and recovered quickly and efficiently. An automated workflow replaces a potentially disjointed list of tasks. Security is an expansive issue, so I don't pretend to address every aspect of it here. I'd like to narrow it down a little and talk about DNS security. Since I talked about addressing DNS, your foundation or core first. Your business is driven by DNS, like I said before. However, DNS is an open environment designed for speed and scalability, not security. Because of that, DNS has become a popular means to distribute malware, probe your network, and exfiltrate data. Good practice dictates that you protect the integrity of your network, think DDoS attacks, so that your users, both internal and external, can always have access to the applications and services they rely on. Good practice requires protecting your most critical asset, your data, often termed as a new currency, by detecting and preventing malicious software from leveraging DNS to exfiltrate this critical asset. Good practice is about protecting your users against the spread of malware by blocking the ability of malware to communicate at multiple points of the cyber kill chain. Data breaches have become all too common and the cost can be staggering. DNS is a common way to execute a data breach, so it must be a point of emphasis. Malware may or may not be rooted in DNS, but it almost always uses DNS to communicate as some at some or multiple points in the cyber kill chain. Good practice involves ensuring that your current security infrastructure is effective and optimized with shared threat intelligence that is timely, accurate, and comprehensive. Furthermore, good practice demands that you share indicators of compromise to enable faster problem resolution with automated response. DNS, DHCP, and IPAM is the source of critical and timely information about a network. By linking that information to specialized network security products, often termed as network context, prioritization of threats can enable more effective response. Infoblox offers products that allow you to achieve these goals of protecting your infrastructure, protecting your data, preventing the spread of malware, and making sure that your infrastructure you already have works better together. We do this with timely and accurate threat intelligence, active blocking of malicious communication, and an open API framework to connect with your existing security products, whether you're talking about network access control, endpoint security, SIMs, and so on. I've talked about our perspective and what we can do. I want to provide you with a customer perspective, a validation of the quantitative claims as shown by Kevin, and a qualitative assessment of solutions Infoblox provides. As a customer said, a huge factor for them is that Infoblox is partnered with Microsoft and its DDI solutions tie in with Active Directory. They have seen significant savings in time. Prior to Infoblox, all IP management for them was done by hand, which opened them up to errors and did not give them the visibility they required. The case study I've highlighted here is such an IT organization that supports mission-critical servers within the U.S. Department of Defense. Because the IT organization had challenges of getting new hardware into its data center, they embraced virtualization, using virtual rather than physical appliances to deploy new services faster. Like most IT organizations, they had a heterogeneous environment, including Windows and Linux, and needed a single centralized management resource. In the past, the organization made use of disparate management tools, including Microsoft MMC, and text files across servers running bind, ISC, and DHCP tools, several of them free. And like Kevin talked about, free always is associated with a certain cost. These tools did not measure up to the tasks such as frequent global DNS name refreshes as naming conventions changed. The goal was to eliminate legacy processes to improve efficiency, eliminate errors from manual processes, and streamline operations. Additional requirements were single sign-on and role-based access. But the overarching concern was efficiency, saving time, winning back from manual processes, and increasing productivity. Like Kevin talked about, the opportunity cost of having people focus on these low-end tasks versus shifting them to higher value tasks that can add more value to your organization. With Infoblox, the DoD was able. The DoD has been using Infoblox for over 5 years, and with Infoblox deployed in their virtual environment, they are able to spin up and spin down resources rapidly. They have created workflows that are going to allow selection of IP addresses through the API framework that we provide in an automated fashion. And when a machine is torn down, information automatically flows back into Infoblox. In other words, for cleanup. In other words, complete automation. Instead of humans being involved, they they are dynamically going to build and destroy servers on demand. The customer is running multiple Infoblox physical and virtual appliances in high availability mode to support DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. And they are using Infoblox adapters for VMware, vCloud, Automation Center, and vCenter Orchestrator. To summarize, to keep pace with the increasing network complexities and deliver always-on, reliable, scalable, and secure network services, you must have efficient core network services, a complete and unified view of the networks and associated resources, the ability to scale, provision, and manage network services across virtualized and cloud platforms, protection for the enterprise from DNS-based threats. The network is the core of your business, and it starts with DNS. And it must depend on more than just existing free and legacy DDI solutions to deliver the performance your customers expect. Infoblox addresses these challenges from the network core, and as Kevin talked about, the cost of not modernizing your network to keep up with the next generation of business needs can add up quickly. Of course, I can keep talking about Infoblox, but I will pause to open it up for questions, to questions from you. There's a few questions that have been posted. Is there a way to try Infoblox DDI solutions? Good question. So yes, you can try a variety of Infoblox solutions. They are available for download from our website. And if you need guidance through the process, feel free to engage with us, and we'd be glad to work with you and guide you through the process. There are several ways to trial our solutions, from DDI to plugins into your public cloud network, and we are happy to do a deep dive with you on how exactly this can help and work with you on quantifying the savings that you might be able to achieve.
So this is Kevin. I see a couple of questions that have come up for me. So, looking at this, I think, I'm going to jump to the second one first, which is about the siloed teams. Again, in our study, we took a best case approach to this. We had a test environment, so we could move from looking at updating IP information to going over and dealing with network infrastructure, with switches, et cetera. We didn't have the silos. From what I see, the silos are very much a part of life. And so that the time that we saw it taking to get these jobs done is going to be considerably longer, because there'll be almost always a delay as something moves from silo to silo. So I think it's a little hard to quantify exactly what that delay would be, but it's important to quantify that and understand that if you can automate these things to work across those silos, you can avoid all of that. Similarly, when you look at hybrid environments today, the cloud, the public-private, all these different elements that to kind of extend what Prakash was saying, things are more flexible than they used to be. Wherever you want to put that stake in the ground for the past, but they're also more complex. And so as we look at trying to deal with deployments that are hybrid, partly in my data center, partly on some cloud, whether it's my cloud or an AWS or wherever it happens to be, where I'm spinning up instances, it's very, very involved. Some of these things just really can't be done manually. They really need to have to be tightly integrated with an automation and orchestration, so that you are either microservices type of environments, DevOps environments, can be able to have the services that they need. And going all the way back to the beginning, Prakash said you need DNS, right? You have to be able to find the network resource that you're working with. So it always gets back to that essential. You can't do without it. And the more efficient you can make that process, the happier you'll have your users will be because they'll have services spun up faster. The more efficient your technical staff will be, and the fewer errors that you'll have. So overall, that's good. So those seem to be the main questions for me. Prakash, are other ones that you'd like to handle?
No, it's interesting, right, Kevin? Both your study and the graphics that I seem to show seem to focus on the simpler tasks, and it's incredible how quickly these smaller, simpler tasks can add up and become a time sink like you addressed earlier on. It might not be very often that you add a printer to your network. However, you are changing subnets and adding IP addresses almost on a daily basis. And in a cloud environment, like you mentioned, some things are just going to be impossible to do manually. There's no way you can allocate an IP address manually to a virtualized machine that's going to spin up and spin down in a matter of seconds. You have to have automation. So obviously no study can capture the impact of things that you just cannot do if you have a manual environment. So,
exactly.
Not a specific question for you, just a comment to build on what you said, Kevin.
Yep. That I think is important too. As we move into the automated environments, where the microservices, the resources are automated, there isn't really any manual method of dealing with them. It's just really not an option. So this moves, having something like the IPAM certainly moves people where everything is going, which is to make these things just happen automatically.
And there's another question about free versus Infoblox, right? It's not. We talked about the cost savings, and one can argue that the cost savings can come from a free solution too. However, what you cannot get with a free solution is this much broader integration into everything else that you have in your infrastructure, an open API framework. Going back to the manual tasks, right? You don't want to necessarily shift resources from manual tasks and have them focused on customizing your solution or building a DNS solution for yourself, building out your own APIs. Would you rather have something that's out of the box that it can already integrate with your current environment, that provides this integration into a multi-cloud, multi-vendor environment out of the box, that provides you integrated security, or would you rather build it yourself? And I would argue for the trend today is current IT. Everybody would rather see something that has been built by a commercial vendor than try to build it themselves. Since the skill sets are different, the focus is different. People want to focus on their specific business challenges, not necessarily become a custom IT development shop.
Amen to that.
I believe those were all the questions that we had, and I think there was another one that was answered online. If there aren't any other questions, I know we are 50 minutes into this webinar. I wanted to thank everybody for their time and attendance. To recap, right? Think about automation. Small things can add up to be big time sinks, and our attempt at Infoblox is to help you focus on your core needs and not have to worry about DNS, DHCP, IP address management, and integrated security with that. So with that, thank you everybody for attending the webinar. We appreciate your time, and if you need to contact us, you know where to reach us. Kevin, thank you so much for your insights.
Sure, thank you for having me. Thanks everybody.